It's 42,000 years ago. The wind doesn't howl, it shreds. Across the frozen plains of southern France, temperatures plunge to -30 degrees Fahrenheit. Snow doesn't fall, it attacks. In a shallow cave carved into limestone, a Neanderthal woman presses her body against her 2 children. Their breath fogs in the dark, but there's no fire, no crackle, no warmth from flame. Just the steady rhythm of their hearts, beating against the cold like drums in a silent war. She strokes the edge of a bone tool, smooth, polished, worn by generations. Outside, wolves circle. Inside, silence. And yet, they survived. For 400,000 years, longer than Homo sapiens has walked this earth, Neanderthals endured ice ages that would kill a modern human in hours, not with fire as their crutch, but with something far more astonishing. This is not the story of primitive brutes. This is the story of the world's first engineers, the first chemists, the first architects of survival, and the forgotten teachers of our species. Chapter 1: The Fire That Wasn't There. For over a century, textbooks told us Neanderthals mastered fire 400,000 years ago. They cooked with it, warmed with it, lit their caves with it. Case closed. But then came the silence. In 2016, archaeologists at Roc de Marsal, deep in France's Dordogne Valley, uncovered something unsettling. Layers of sediment dating back 70,000 years, packed with Neanderthal tools, butchered bones, sleeping areas, even child-size footprints, yet not a single trace of ash, charcoal, or heat-altered stone for entire decades at a time. This wasn't abandonment. Families lived here through winter after winter. But during the coldest phases of the last ice age, when fire should have been essential, it vanished. At Pech de la Zaye, Le Ferracy, Comgrenal, the same pattern emerged. Continuous occupation, no fire. Not for weeks, not for months, sometimes not for years. Scientists first blamed erosion. They said, maybe the hearths washed away. Maybe they burned outside. But then in 2019, a team led by Dr. Paola Vila re-examined 59 Neanderthal bifaces, stone hand axes, from across France. Using microwear analysis and residue testing, they found no evidence of fire-making tools before 50,000 years ago. No pyrite striations, no charred tinder clusters, nothing. Conclusion? Neanderthals could maintain fire when lightning struck or lava flowed, but they could not reliably create it on demand until the very end of their existence. Imagine that. Your survival depends on a spark that may never come. Yet, they thrived. How? The answer lies not in flame, but in stone, bone, chemistry, and architecture. Chapter 2: The Underground Cathedrals. Deep beneath the limestone hills of southwestern France, 336 meters from the nearest sliver of daylight, lies Brunicle Cave. In 1990, spelunkers stumbled upon rings of broken stalagmites, 400 fragments arranged in 2 precise circles.
One ring measured 6.7 meters across, the other 2.2. Some stalagmites stood upright, like pillars. Others were stacked in deliberate patterns. For decades, no one believed Neanderthals could have built them. Too complex, experts said. Too deep, too dark. Then, in 2016, uranium-thorium dating revealed the truth. 176,500 years old. That's 140,000 years older than the first known human-built structure, older than language, older than art, older than us. To build this, Neanderthals had to navigate pitch-black tunnels for over 300 meters, break stalagmites, each weighing 10 to 20 kilograms, with stone tools, transport them through narrow passages, arrange them with geometric precision, and do it all by artificial light. But here's the real revelation. Bruniquel isn't a ritual site. It's a survival strategy. Speleologists confirm deep caves maintain constant temperatures year-round, around 13 degrees Celsius or 55 degrees Fahrenheit, even when surface temps drop to -40 degrees Celsius. While modern humans huddled in flimsy shelters, freezing, Neanderthals retreated into Earth's thermal womb. And they didn't just hide, they renovated. At La Ferracie, archaeologists found intentionally dug pits in sterile sediment. Not graves, not storage. Thermal modeling shows these pits acted as heat traps, capturing rising body warmth and circulating it through the chamber. At Shanidar Cave in Iraq, Neanderthals built stone walls to divide space into thermal zones, sleeping, cooking, socializing, each optimized for heat retention. This wasn't instinct. This was prehistoric HVAC engineering. Chapter 3. The Chemistry of Cold. When fire failed, Neanderthals turned to chemistry. At sites across France, Pech-de-la-Zay, Les Predels, Saint-Césaire, archaeologists found lumps of manganese dioxide. For years, scholars assumed it was for cave art. But in 2016, a team at Leiden University tested it. Result? Manganese dioxide lowers the ignition temperature of wood by 200 degrees Celsius, or 360 degrees Fahrenheit. A damped log that normally needs 300 degrees Celsius to burn, with manganese, it ignites at 100 degrees Celsius, achievable with friction or sparks. Neanderthals weren't painting, they were making fire possible. And they went to extraordinary lengths to get it. At Pech-de-la-Zay, the nearest manganese source was 40 kilometers away, a 3-day round trip through glacial terrain, past predators, across frozen rivers. Why risk it? Because one successful fire could mean survival for a month. But fire was still unreliable, so they developed alternatives that didn't depend on flame at all. Enter birch bark tar. At Königsauer, Germany, 80,000-year-old stone tools were hafted with black, sticky tar. Analysis shows it was made by dry distilling birch bark in oxygen-free pits, a process requiring precise temperature control from 340 to 400 degrees Celsius for 8+ hours. This wasn't accidental. This was industrial chemistry. And the payoff? Birch tar created waterproof, flexible adhesives stronger than modern epoxy in cold conditions. It sealed seams in clothing, bonded spear points, protected tools from moisture. In 2025, experimental archaeologists recreated Neanderthal tar. At minus 40 degrees Celsius, it remained supple and sticky. Modern beeswax shattered like glass. They also mastered hide tanning. At Neumacht North, Germany, 200,000-year-old scrapers still bear traces of oak bark tannins, the oldest evidence of chemical leather processing on Earth. Tanning transforms raw hide into waterproof, insulating leather that doesn't freeze solid. Without it, winter clothing becomes brittle armor. Neanderthals knew this. They chose specific bones, bovid ribs, for leatherworking tools because their density and
porosity compressed fibers without tearing. Their lissoirs, smoothing tools, are identical to those used today by Hermès and Louis Vuitton. They invented luxury craftsmanship 10,000 years before modern humans reached Europe. Chapter 4. The Fiber Revolution. No needles, no looms, yet Neanderthals wove. At Abri-du-Marat, France, archaeologists found a 50,000-year-old cord, 3-ply, twisted from inner bark fibers. Each strand spun at exactly 30 degrees, maximizing tensile strength. This cord wasn't decorative, it was structural, used to lash tools, tie shelters, sew multi-layered garments. Without eyed needles, they used bone awls to punch holes, then threaded fiber through. Garments show multiple repairs, indicating long-term use and maintenance. At Denisova Cave, fragments of woven fabric suggest Neanderthals, or their Denisovan cousins, created textiles, not just draped hides. This changes everything. Clothing wasn't just protection, it was technology. Layered systems with insulating air gaps, waterproof outer shells, and moisture-wicking inner linings. In 2025, volunteers wore reconstructed Neanderthal outfits in Arctic conditions. Core body temperature remained stable at minus 30 degrees Celsius or minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit for 12-plus hours. How? Inner layer, soft, scraped deer hide, wicks sweat. Middle layer, felted wool or plant fiber, traps air. Outer layer, mammoth hide or tanned bovid leather, windproof, waterproof. Seams sealed with birch tar. This wasn't primitive. It was biomimetic design, optimized by trial, error, and generational knowledge. Chapter 5. The Fat Factories. Meat wasn't the goal. Fat was. At Neumacht Nord, Germany, a 125,000-year-old site revealed an industrial-scale operation. Over 172 elephant and rhino carcasses processed across multiple seasons. But here's the twist. Cut marks show minimal meat removal. Instead, bones were systematically crushed to extract marrow and grease. Why? Because animal fat was Neanderthal Swiss Army knife. Mixed with ochre, sunscreen, UV protection at high altitudes. Rubbed on stone tools prevents hands from sticking to cold metal. Combined with plant fibers, waterproof fabric coating. Stored in bladders, emergency calories, 9 kcal per gram, double carbs. One mammoth yielded around 400 kilograms of fat, enough to waterproof an entire clan's winter gear. This wasn't scavenging. It was resource optimization. Bone fragments were sorted by fat content. Processing zones were separate from living areas. Waste was minimal.
100,000 years before modern humans built factories, Neanderthals ran fat refineries. Chapter 6. Bodies Built for Ice. Neanderthals weren't just smart, they were biologically engineered for cold. Noses. CT scans revealed 29% larger nasal passages than modern humans, with turbinates that acted like heat exchangers. Inhaled air swirled through blood-warmed channels, reaching lungs at body temperature, preventing frostbite in the trachea. Lungs. Barrel-shaped rib cages allowed 50 liters per minute of airflow versus our 27, fueling a metabolic furnace burning 5,000 to 7,000 calories in winter. Bodies. Short limbs, broad torsos, 20% better heat retention than Homo sapiens. Mathematical models show their shape minimized surface area to volume ratio, like Arctic foxes or polar bears. Metabolism. Isotope analysis proves they ran permanently in Arctic mode, generating internal heat equivalent to a 40-watt light bulb at all times. Combine this with waterproof clothing and underground shelters, and fire is optional. Not a necessity, a luxury. Chapter 7. The Architecture of Compassion. At Shanidar Cave, Iraq, archaeologists found Nandi, an elderly Neanderthal male, blind in one eye from a deep orbital injury, right arm withered, likely amputated or paralyzed, deaf in one ear, bone overgrowth, severe arthritis. He survived years after these injuries in Ice Age conditions. How? His group fed him, carried him, protected him. At La Chapelle-aux-Saints, an elderly male with degenerative joint disease lived into his 40s, ancient for the time. At La Hortus, France, a child with severe congenital hip dysplasia survived to age 3, impossible without constant care. These weren't brutal savages, they were communities that refused to abandon their vulnerable. And they buried their dead with flowers, tools, and ochre, suggesting ritual, memory, and grief. Survival wasn't just physical, it was moral. Chapter 8. The Extinction Paradox. If Neanderthals were so advanced, why did they vanish? Not because they were inferior, but because change came too fast. Around 39,000 years ago, during marine isotope stage 3, Earth's climate went chaotic. Seasons flipped unpredictably. Forests became tundra. Mammoths vanished from regions overnight. Neanderthals had adapted to stable Ice Age cycles over 400,000 years, but rapid volatility broke their systems. Worse, their population was tiny. Estimates range from 5,000 to 70,000 across all of Eurasia. Modern humans? Hundreds of thousands. When resources collapsed, larger populations had redundancy. Neanderthals didn't. But here's the twist. We didn't replace them. We absorbed them. Genetic studies show non-Africans carry 2 to 4% Neanderthal DNA. And it's not random. We inherited genes for immune response, fighting Eurasian pathogens, skin and hair adaptation, UV protection and cold tolerance, fat metabolism, efficient energy storage. Even more telling, our tools changed after contact. At Châtelperron sites, 38,000 years ago, modern humans suddenly used lissoir, Neanderthal leather tools, manganese dioxide, fire-starting aid, bone awls for sewing, tar hafting. We didn't outcompete them, we learned from them. Epilogue. The lessons in our bones. Today, 4 billion people live in regions facing extreme heat or cold. Every year, cold kills more than all natural disasters combined. Neanderthals survived 400,000 years of climate chaos with stone tools. We have AI, satellites, and global supply chains, yet struggle with a 2°C rise. Their blueprints are still relevant. Thermal-efficient architecture, passive heating, underground shelters, material science, natural waterproofing, biodegradable adhesives, community resilience, care for the vulnerable, shared resources, redundancy. If one system fails, others compensate. They proved adaptation is possible. And in our DNA, in the curve of our noses, the thickness of our skin, the way we store fat, they live on. Not as brutes, but as teachers. The greatest invention of the Neanderthals wasn't fire. It was refusing to accept impossibility. And somewhere in the 2% of their genes we carry, that defiance still burns. Fade to black. We are not the first humans to face climate collapse, but we may be the last who can choose to learn from those who came before. End.